One day, Tom was working in his bedroom. He felt a sudden chill in the air. He saw something lying on the floor of his room. He went closer to take a look. An onion was lying on the floor of his bedroom. It seemed to have appeared out of nowhere. He picked it up with a surprised and confused look on his face, feeling discomfort. He threw the onion out of his bedroom window. There was something unsettling about the air in the room. He went back to work, but the thought of the onion lingered in the back of his mind. He glanced at the floor again after some time. He saw that the onions had returned, and this time, there were 2 of them lying on the floor of his bedroom. Tom was shocked to see that. He felt confused and scared now. The air in the room seemed much darker. He picked up both onions and threw them out of his window again, then closed the window tightly. As soon as he turned back after closing the window, to his horror, he saw something very strange this time. There were many onions lying on the floor this time. The shape of the onions seemed a little off and eerie. Tom, fueled by anger rather than fear this time, picked up all the onions and forcefully threw them out of the window. Without returning to his work, he went straight to his bed. Tom thought about the incident and closed his eyes. Eventually, he fell asleep. After a few hours, he suddenly heard a loud noise coming from his farm outside. Startled, he woke up suddenly. He went to the window in his bedroom and opened it. What he saw shocked him, leaving him frozen in disbelief. His farm was filled with enormous onions, their surreal shapes dominating the landscape. The sight of the entire farm engulfed by these ominous onions sent a shiver down his spine, as if an unsettling presence had taken root in his very surroundings. He ventured out to the farm, compelled to investigate the strange occurrence. As he made his way through the fields, he eventually arrived at his farm shed. To his shock, he found his shed also filled with giant onions. He pressed on, going deeper and deeper, following what seemed to be a source or pathway leading somewhere. However, as he moved towards the source, a sense of unease washed over him. He noticed the onions starting to change color and texture, resembling blood within their skins. At the end of the shed, he noticed a small door opening that he had never noticed before. Surprised, he decided to enter through the small door. The onions inside had a disturbing shape, somewhat resembling a mouth. Upon closer inspection, he realized that they weren't just mouths, but rather disturbing faces etched onto the surface of the onions. All the nearby onions began to take on disturbing and grotesque facial features. The onions twisted and contorted, morphing into grotesque caricatures of human faces. Tom stood frozen in shock and disbelief, his mind struggling to comprehend the surreal nightmare unfolding before him. The onions had transformed into horrifying creatures, their mouths filled with scary teeth, their shapes contorted into grotesque, humanoid forms reminiscent of monstrous beings. They seemed to stare at Tom, as if they wanted something sinister. Tom realized this wasn't a nightmare, but a terrifying reality. He knew he had to run for his life. However, all the onions in the area had transformed and were now moving towards Tom, advancing with an unsettling purpose. Terrified, Tom began to take steps backward, shaking in disbelief as he desperately searched for the small door through which he had entered, his heart pounding in his chest. Tom, panicked, sprinted towards the door, but it was too late. He found himself surrounded by a multitude of menacing onions from all sides. The monsters lunged at Tom, sinking their teeth into his limbs. Tom screamed as he struggled to break free. Tom felt a strange transformation overtaking him, as his body began to take on the monstrous appearance of the onion creatures surrounding him. Not only was Tom transforming into an onion monster, but the nearby onions also began to take on his likeness, mirroring anyone who took a bite of him. The scene became scarier as Tom and the onions started to change. Each bite from the onions turned them into copies of Tom. It was like a nightmare where everything turned into something terrifying, and there was no escape. Outside, the entire farm was overrun by these monstrous onion creatures. The once peaceful farm had transformed into a nightmarish landscape, where grotesque onion creatures roamed freely, their twisted forms casting ominous shadows across the land. The air was thick with an oppressive sense of fear, as if the very earth itself had become a breeding ground for unspeakable horrors. Tom suddenly woke up, his heart pounding in his chest as he gasped for air. Relief flooded over him as he realized it was all just a dream. A deep sigh escaped his lips as he gradually calmed down. He got out of bed to get some water from the kitchen, but froze in place as soon as his feet touched the floor. His face drained of color, his eyes wide with fear. There was an onion laying on the floor of his room,